Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park 24 baseball playthrough of the Cincinnati Reds. We are midway through the 2026 season. Season is going pretty well for the Reds, 47-33 record, and we are the only team in the National League Central with a winning record. So we were up 7.5 points on the Cubs, 9 on the Brewers, and the Pirates and the Cards are both 12 games behind. So hopefully the team is in a good situation to ensure a third consecutive playoff berth. The big battle right now, it looks like it's going to be with the Braves to see which division winner has the second best record in the National League and joins the Dodgers with the first round bye. But obviously a lot can change over the final 82 games of the season, but that's the way things are looking right now. Despite our good performance on the field, fan interest has actually deteriorated to a 66 by 3 points this year. We are going to try to get a few more fans in the seats. Attendance has been pretty solid recently, but we're still going to cut ticket prices just a bit to $20. Hopefully can have a long string of sellouts or close to sellouts the rest of the way, despite our mediocre fan interest, and generate a little bit more revenue. Right now we're set to be down about 10% a game. We'll see whether this change will ultimately result in a better number than that by the end of the season. We also have made one trade offer. We took a look at the players that are on the trading block, and Carson Kelly interested us a bit. Mainly as an insurance policy, respectable defensive catcher, captain personality, and a bat that could hit some home runs in Great American Ballpark. Not a brilliant hitter, especially in terms of his batting average, and the number of strikeouts this year with 65 and 198 at-bats is not all that impressive. But right now we are in a situation where we have Tyler Stevenson in the last year of his contract, making about $11.5 million. And he is looking for $15 million a year over 5 years to come back to us. And his defensive profile is pretty similar, honestly. I like Carson Kelly's a bit better with the 5 extra points in catcher ability and the 5 fewer points in catcher arm. They're both captain personalities. Tyler Stevenson a little bit better with contact, but otherwise you could argue that Carson Kelly is a bit better hitter. And Carson Kelly is signed for next year and making a lot less money. And right now our backup catcher, Daniel Vallejin, hitting better than he did last year when he hit a $165 before we sent him down to the minors. But just a .210 batting average this year. He's still got options available. So I think bringing on Kelly would potentially serve two purposes. It would upgrade our backup catcher certainly right now, and there's an argument that Kelly could be starting over Stevenson. And it would also give us an insurance policy for Tyler Stevenson next year. You can see Kelly's set to make $7.7 million. So about half of what Tyler Stevenson is looking for next season. So it's unlikely, given the financial situation that we're in, that we'll be able to bring Stevenson back because you look at our salary situation, we're at 115-ish, 116 actually million right now. And we're poised to be $130 million next year, and that's even without bringing Stevenson on board. So unless we get a nice bump in our budget, which lets us put up our payroll a bit, it's going to be unlikely that we can bring back Stevenson anyways. So we have put an offer out there. I don't know that it's going to be accepted. If I pull up the proper screen, which I'm not going to right now. All right, finally at the proper screen to show the pending trade. We had offered backup catcher Matthew Nelson, who's in AAA right now, not all that great defensively, and second baseman Acosta, who's a decent but not great prospect. We're asking Miami to retain 70% of his contract. We just submitted this earlier today. I have no idea where this offer will go, but want to at least get the discussion going with the Marlins. We'll see what they have to say. And even if we are able to bring on Kelly, still should have a little more money to potentially improve our team as we try to not just hang on to this playoff berth, but hopefully build a double-digit lead in the NL Central. Looking at our team statistics, we're middle of the pack in runs scored, 7th in the National League, 1st in runs allowed, 2nd best starters ERA, 7th in bullpen ERA. Pretty good defensively, pretty good stealing bases, although our base running is not exceptional. After a slow start to the season in April, we had an excellent May, a solid June, and we're off to a great start in July, but a very small sample size with that 2-0 record. And it's been a busy 24 hours for the Reds. We lost to Kansas City yesterday. Ellie De La Cruz, his strained quad, going to be day-to-day for about 2 weeks. Minimal impact on his running. He's hitting .319, 21 homers, 65 ribbies, 22 stolen bases on his way to another monster year. As I talked about in our last episode, at the end of the episode, he's got an outside chance at being a 40-40 guy this year, although certainly the strained quad isn't going to help his ability to steal any bases. I think we're going to try to let him play through that, but I don't feel great about that decision. And we also got a reaction from Miami. They said no way to that trade proposal, looking for big-time hitter like Austin Hendrick, our starting center fielder, Kei Kodama, who's really been a starter for us most of this year, hitting just .249, but does have 13 homers. Errol Vera, the Rule 5 pick from a couple of years ago, who's become basically our starting third baseman, starting second baseman part of the time now that we have some injuries to Nelvi Marte. But they would also be willing to take David Rocha. You may remember him. Made him as an international free agent signing just this year, 4 months ago, or 5 months ago at this point in February. He's off to a weird start in rookie ball. They're using him as a starter, driven by his stamina and the fact that he probably has more potential than most guys at that level. 2-2 with a .596 ERA. I don't put a lot of stock in what an 18-year-old is doing in the DSL in the first 5 games of his career. But it's clear that he's only going to be a reliever. I don't know if I would make this trade if we were going to be playing for the next 5 seasons, 10 seasons as the Reds. But we can get Carson Kelly on board, which, like I said, is a great insurance policy for Stevenson, not just for next year, but quite honestly for this year. Upgrades certainly our catcher position as the backup, and it's conceivable that David Bell would start Kelly over Tyler Stevenson at this point. So being a team that's trying to win this year, I think we're going to go ahead and do that deal. So we're going to add David Rocha in the deal. They'll keep 70% of Carson Kelly's contract, which will be good for us. And we're going to go ahead and complete that deal. Players happy to have the leadership of Kelly on board. And we will send Mr. Vejahin back down to AAA to open up a spot for Kelly on the roster. And David Bell actually wants to put Carson Kelly right into the starting lineup as our starting catcher. As I mentioned, his catcher ability is a notch higher than Tyler Stevenson's, at least according to our scout. Stevenson is a better contact hitter, but otherwise you can certainly argue that Kelly's better contact hitter. I guess better at everything except contact. I think there's also a chance, although this is probably going to make Tyler Stevenson pretty angry, that this results in his contract demands being something perhaps more reasonable when he realizes he's not a starting catcher anymore. So we'll see how it goes. But we'll give the manager the ability to make that decision with his shiny new toy in Carson Kelly. And actually, I lied. I took a look at their ratings, and I'm actually going to play Tyler Stevenson as our starting catcher against left-handers. I think he's got a little bit better offense there and pretty similar defense, so we're going into more of a platoon situation, even though they are both actually right-handed hitters. Obviously, Carson Kelly, being the one who's going to be playing against right-handers, will likely get the preponderance of the playing time. And the month of July going pretty well for the Reds so far. We ended up taking that series against Kansas City despite losing the first game. We took 3 out of 4 in Chicago, and we've split the first 2 in New York in the Bronx against the Yankees. Final game before the All-Star break is tomorrow. But before we get to that, we've got the first-year player draft. And the Reds, by virtue of our good regular season last year, are going to be picking 30th. So probably not going to get a big-time prospect, but we will see how the draft unfolds and see what type of talent we can add to this Reds roster for the future. And we've made it to our 30th pick in the draft. And one thing that I have noticed, at least in this playthrough, obviously very anecdotal, but I have also heard comments from viewers and seen on the message boards that although it seems like the 23, 24, and 25 drafts, the talent level is generally pretty meager. You can see with the 30th pick in the draft, at least according to our scout here, there's some pretty high potential players available as far as batters and even some interesting pitchers potentially available. So it looks like I'm experiencing what others have experienced in that by 2026 or so, the drafts start to turn around and have a little bit more talent in them than the ones that have the real players who are really decently scouted at this point. And taking a look at the pitchers available, there's actually 4 that I'd be perfectly content to take here at pick number 30, which probably means that I'm going to lean towards hoping one of them falls to us in the second round. But Josh Watson is an 18-year-old, durable, excellent stamina, pretty good at holding runners, has a potential 3-pitch arsenal, fastball, slider, sinker. His stuff looks like it's going to be average. Really good movement potential, good control potential, extreme ground ball tendencies. Looks like he could be a pretty interesting pitcher in Cincinnati. Callum McDonald, another interesting prospect, 18-year-old, already has 4 pitches that are not too far off major league level, throwing in the low to mid-90s, durable, good work ethic. Again, looks like he could be a pretty interesting pitcher. Doesn't have as much stamina, not as good as holding runners, but interesting prospect. Kevin Doss, a third 18-year-old high schooler, durable, nice profile with the stamina and the holding runners. Potentially a 4-pitch arsenal. Could very well end up being a 3-pitch arsenal if the change doesn't develop. Again, really nice movement on his pitches, good control. The stuff for all 3 of these guys is kind of the weakest. And then Joe Clark is the 4th of these 5 3.5-star pitchers that's interesting to us. He's a college student, almost 22 years old. Decent stamina, decent holding runners. He's got a 5-pitch arsenal, 4 of which are close to major league level at this point. Who knows what's going to happen with the changeup, but it has developed a little bit. Looks like he could have a bit above average stuff in control, really nice movement, throwing in the mid to high 90s. He could be someone who could help us in the next season or 2, depending on how long we continue moving along with Cincinnati. It's Sunday morning, the 7th, as I am recording this episode, and the new beta patch is out for those of you who are unaware. So hopefully if that goes well, there could be a patch available more broadly, maybe by the end of this coming week, that could address, some of the concerns and some of the reasons why I've been a little reticent to start a long-term play. So for the near term, we're going to keep plugging along with Cincinnati. Obviously, if we start a season with the Reds, we're going to complete it like the one that we're in right now. But cautiously optimistic that maybe within the next week or two we'll have the opportunity to start our long-term play in OOTP 24. But I digress. Back to the draft. We'll turn our attention to some of the top hitting prospects. Third baseman Rob Bromberg certainly looks like he could have an interesting bat. The 18-year-old got a nice arm for a third baseman. The range in the error rating, not optimal, but you could live with it. Certainly looks like could be a pretty productive offensive player at third base. Catcher Crevin Rogers could be slightly above average in terms of his catcher ability and arm, like the durability, like the contact and home run power. Don't love the personality, particularly the low leadership and work ethic. Probably would have a tough time taking him. Alejandro Aceves is a 20-year-old outfielder. Looks like he could have a decent bat. Wish he had a little more speed. Nothing special defensively. Not all that exciting to me. Shortstop Jim Ahern. The bat is certainly interesting with contact, gap power, and avoiding strikeouts that are close to maxed out or off the charts. Has okay speed, so he will generate some extra base hits with that gap power. Could hit some home runs. Personality, a big problem, though. Lacks motivation, and he's low in my holy triumvirate of work ethic, leadership, and intelligence. Just don't know if he's ever going to meet his full potential, but certainly an interesting prospect. Chris Massey, right fielder. Just pure power with that home run power, not a lot of speed, a few personality quirks with the low leadership in particular. Yahim Quainton is a pretty interesting bat, pretty similar to Ahern in terms of contact, gap power, and avoiding strikeouts, but could have plus home run power and an eye. He's durable. He's got some speed. He's got some defensive versatility. And one of the better personalities, quite honestly, that we've seen among these batting prospects. I don't love the low intelligence, but at least there's not red or perhaps more accurately orange all over his profile. I kind of am most intrigued by him and Bromberg among the hitting prospects. I'll take a look here at Arturo Barrios. We're getting down into the 3.5-star guys, but you know I love the good personalities, and Barrios is also durable. Good personality, as I noted. Looks like a fairly interesting bat. The below average range, the below average arm, really good at turning double play. So he's a second baseman. But that range and error rating are certainly lower than ideal for a second baseman, in my opinion. He's also almost 23 years old, so a guy who could be helping soon. See what our scouting director recommends. He recommends Yahim Quainton, the very toolsy shortstop. I don't hate that idea. I mean, you look at that contact, gap power, avoiding strikeouts, all exceptional, and could also have above average home run power and eye. He is durable. He's got the range to play just about anywhere you'd want him to in the infield. I think he's not perfect for any position. It looks like he can also play in the outfield. He's got 60s across in the outfield, so he could play any position in the outfield. Ideally, you'd like him to be a little better in center field, but looks like a guy who ultimately could play respectably any position on the field except catcher. So there's definitely something to be said for him. His bonus demand is very reasonable. Signability is easy. Only mark against him is that low intelligence. But we've got a lot of high work ethic and leadership guys who will hopefully potentially have a good influence on his habits in the minors if we do pick him up. I think he's a very interesting prospect. I think if it came down to Rob Bromberg or Jaheim Quainton, or Jaheim Quainton, I think might be the correct pronunciation. Jaheim Quainton, I got to take a flyer on Quainton. And I do like some of those pictures, but my only thought is that it's not inconceivable that Clark, Doss, McDonald, or Watson could be around in the second round. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think there's no probability that Jaheim Quainton is going to be around for us, and I'll eventually figure out how I'm going to pronounce his name. I think there's no chance that he's going to be around in the second round. Love the defensive versatility, love the speed, absolutely love the potential bat, love the durability. The only knock on him is that he's not the sharpest tool in the drawer, but we are going to go ahead and meet his demand, which is well above slot, well below slot. And welcome to the Reds, Jaheim. And we made it to our pick in the second round in Jim Ahern, who was kind of the equivalent of Jaheim in terms of his profile. Not as good defensively, not as fast, and a really problematic personality is still around. But let us see if somehow one of those pitchers that we really liked fell to us in the second round. Kevin Doss is still around. I think we go with him. I can't claim that he was my favorite. He's likely only to have a 3-pitch arsenal, but plus stamina, plus holding runners, really good movement, durable, 18-year-old high school pitching prospect. You never know what's going to happen with a player like that, but he's also looking for pretty good money. That's probably why he's the one who's still around. I believe that the other 3 guys that I liked were easy to sign, given that we saved a little bit of money with bringing on Jaheim. We can probably make this work. It's going to be tight, but also picking him in the second round, if we don't get him signed, we'll get a compensatory pick. So I'm leaning that way. Scouting director recommends we go with Jim Ahern. Again, we just picked the exact same player, but I think a better player in Jaheim. Player with low leadership, work ethic, intelligence. I just think there's so many things that can go wrong in terms of his development. You know, there's an argument you just take a shot on a guy like this, hope he develops. But I do really like Kevin Doss. And we looked at these other 3 starters, Alvaro Alanis, Mike Cardenas, and Eddie Jones. None of them are as good as Doss. Even with the $6 million demand, we should be able to just fit that in. It could hamper our ability to bring on some additional talent as we get closer to the trade deadline. Maybe Carson Kelly is going to be our big acquisition this July. We'll find out. But I like the idea of bringing Doss on board. So we're going to draft him in the second round, and then we're obviously going to have to be in the next rest of the draft, basically, be just very careful to pick guys who are only looking for slot or looking for less than slot in some cases to make them guys that will be able to fit in with Doss, given our budgetary constraints. So Kevin Doss, welcome to Cincinnati. And the draft is over. Got 1 game left against the Yankees before the All-Star break. Not normally all that active on the waiver wire. Probably something I should check more frequently. But Ruben Galindo from the Padres is on the waiver wire. A guy who's making the major league minimum. And he's got option years left. I just don't understand why they waived him. Something horrible must have happened. But he's put up a 2.70 ERA in San Diego this year. His stuff is off the charts. decent movement, decent control. Think he could be a pretty interesting reliever. We're in a situation right now where we're good with pitchers, quite honestly. We've got 13 up at the major league level who are generally pitching well to very well. And we also right now do have both Clark Schmidt and the Rule 5 pickup Jack Neely on rehab assignments in AAA. So we're going to have some tough decisions to make. But I think Galindo is certainly worth taking a flyer on. We're going to put in a claim. I have a feeling that with our claim's been accepted. Yeah, other teams could claim him. Obviously, we'll find out. But I think it's worth taking a shot at him. If nobody else claims him, he does still have option years left. So it's unclear to me exactly why he ended up on the waiver wire, but could be an advantage for us. And our claim for Ruben Galindo did go through. I think he's an interesting prospect. I mean, 25 years old, so I guess he's not really so prospecty anymore, but he looks like he could start. He looks like he could relieve. Really happy to have him on board. I think that just gives us a little more flexibility and optionality in the organization. Obviously, we'll put him on the secondary roster, and we will send him to Louisville, and happy to have him on board. Think that could be a useful move for us. Let's take a look at the All-Star Game rosters. Would think with a 54-36 record, 90 games into the season, well in first place in the NL Central, we should have some good representation. Corbin Burns, 6-6 with a 3.61 ERA, is on the All-Star team. Will Warren, still undefeated, 13-0, 2.27 ERA. So a couple of pitchers make the All-Star roster. Ellie De La Cruz, even though he's been banged up a bit, 3.14, 23 homers. He is an All-Star. And it looks like that is it. So 3 All-Stars for our Cincinnati Reds. Not an excessive amount, but good representation as we sit here at the All-Star break on the 13th of July. We've now got a double-digit lead, 10.5 games up on the Cubs in the division. You can see those 3 teams are all separated by 2.5 games. They all have losing records. We are in a flat-footed tie with the Braves for the second-best record in the National League. They also have a 10.5 game lead in their division, and the Dodgers up by 12.5 in the West. So Dodgers with that 62-29 record look like they certainly will have likely the best record in baseball and likely the number 1 seed in the National League, obviously, and one of the 2 byes. And it looks like over these last 72 games of the season, we could have a great race between the Reds and the Braves for the second best record in the National League and that critical first round bye right to the NLDS. And as we're coming out of the All-Star break, we started playing games again. Got an interesting offer from the Guardians. They will all give us 22-year-old minor league center fielder Miguel Blaise. Decent glove, a little bit of speed, bat that looks like it could be close to average major league bat. He's hit just a $181 for them this year in the majors. Does still have 2 option years left. All they're looking for him are 26-year-old minor league outfielder Ricardo Mendez. Not as good defensively, not as fast, similar batting profile. Now, Mendez does still have 3 option years left, so there's some value there, but he's also 26 years old, just not a big-time prospect in my view at this point. And minor league pitcher Maverick Rizzi has a good personality, good influence on the clubhouse, but we've got plenty of players like that. He's never made it out of rookie ball yet, and he's 21 years old. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. Blaze will go right into AAA, but just gives us another decent defensive option if we have some injuries, and a little optionality if Jay Allen II's bat just doesn't work out well enough for the long term to be a major league quality hitter for us. And the Reds have been playing a little worse of late. You can see our winning percentage dipped back below 600, but still dominant position in the NL Central, up 10.5. We are 2 games behind the Braves now, unfortunately, for the second best record in the National League. So it is conceivable that we end up having to play in a wild card series, which is certainly not the preferred route for our team. Right now, though, we are at decision time with Jack Neely. You may remember he was the Rule 5 pick we made from the Twins last December. He ended up suffering a torn meniscus in spring training. Was supposed to miss about 4 months, but he actually recovered a little early, has now completed a 30-day rehab assignment. And we've got to figure out what to do with him. And in AAA, he was pretty good. No runs allowed over 9 innings pitched, struck out 14, a 1 whip, 6 saves, went right into the closer role in Louisville. Unfortunately for us, there's no obvious spot on the roster for him. We talked about Burns and Warren being all-stars. Lodolo at 11-4. Shocking that he was not an all-star. Zach Gallen has gotten the ERA under 4, although his record still leaves something to be desired. And River San Martin has been a revelation as a 5th starter for us. 7-2 record now on the year with a 2.67 ERA. Clay Holmes, although the ERA is ugly, we talked about that in our last episode. He had 2 really bad outings back-to-back, but still has probably the best profile of anyone in our bullpen. Going to keep him as a closer for the time being. Max Meyer, Andre Palante, Justin Brule, Brett Martin, and Alexis Diaz have all been doing well. And Chase Petty and Huascar Noah have gotten their season straightened out in the bullpen. Chase Petty is a guy that we started the season as our 4th starter, and he did not do well as a starter. Clearly has been more effective in the pen. But he's a 23-year-old who does have 3 option years left, and we're just using him as a long reliever right now. So we are actually going to send Petty down to AAA, put him into the starting rotation there, get him more regular action, hopefully going 6 or 7 innings every 5 days, and give the opportunity to see what Neely can do at a major league level. We are going to have another decision soon. Clark Schmidt has got 13 days left on his rehab assignment. So I don't know if it's an embarrassment of riches as far as our pitching at this point, but we're definitely in a solid situation with our pitching staff as we head towards August and head towards the trade deadline at the end of this month. And as we head into the last week of July and heading towards the trade deadline at the end of this week, take a quick look at the standings. Still up 10.5. It's on Pittsburgh now. They are 9-1 over their last 10. So there's finally another 500 team in the NL Central. We are once again in a flat-footed tie with the Braves for the second best record in the NL. And with the Dodgers struggling a bit, 3-7 over their last 10. They've lost 2 in a row. We're now only 4 games behind the Dodgers for the best record in the National League and the best record in baseball. So maybe a little bit more of a battle between 3 teams for those 2 byes than just between us and the Braves for the second bye, depending on how the rest of the season goes. Getting to the point where, as I mentioned, Clark Schmidt's going to be in decision time, or we'll be facing a decision on Clark Schmidt within 9 days. he's spent, more time this year in Louisville than he has at the major league level with the couple of injuries that he's suffered in the rehab assignments. He hasn't been brilliant at either level, but hasn't been bad at either level either. But with San Martin pitching pretty well as our fifth starter, there's no real urgency to bringing him back right away. But we will have to make a decision shortly on what's going to happen with Schmidt. Take a look at the team statistics. We're fourth in the National League in runs scored now, first in runs allowed. Our 60-39 record is 2 below expectations in terms of wins. 714 winning percentage again this month, matching what we did in the month of May. So we're playing as well as we've played this entire season. And with the fact that we did end up going for that more expensive starting pitching prospect in the second round, don't have a ton of money to play with to bring talent on board. You can see also that the drop of our ticket prices really hasn't helped out in terms of we're generating even less revenue. So although our fan interest has dipped another notch to 65, we're going to put ticket prices back where they were, hoping that with us in the midst of a playoff race and a pennant race and having a pretty good season going, the fans will show up in August and September in Cincinnati. So given that we've got such depth of pitching and such good performing pitching, I think it's unlikely we're going to go there unless we can get an ace starter for nothing and have the other team retain all of his contract, which I think is unlikely. With Kelly and Stevenson teamed up at catcher, even though Kelly has been bad with us, hitting just a $136 through his first 44 at-bats. I think that we're fine at catcher. Ellie De La Cruz still having an MVP caliber season for us at first base. Braylon Minier, the top prospect on our team, one of the top prospects in baseball, hitting just .224, but does have 4 doubles, a triple, and 2 home runs in his first 76 major league at-bats. His playing time could be a bit in jeopardy when Nelvi Marte comes back, but that's still a while off. His injury is definitely lingering. He's still 6 weeks away at this point. So unlikely to be an issue there until September call-ups, where we may get in a numbers game. Third base with Encarnacion Strand, Matt McLean, and Errol Vera is a odd position for us. McLean could certainly be the odd man out at some point. He's on the interstate for a second consecutive season. Does have one option year left, so we could send him down to AAA if need be. Edwin Arroyo, pretty secure in shortstop. Outfield is honestly a position where we could use a big bat. And that sounds a little odd perhaps because you see that Austin Hendrick is 15 homers, Jared Kelnick 17, and Kei Kodama 18. But Kelnick's hitting just .244, Hendrick hitting just .213, Kodama the most productive with his .266 average. He's also stolen 20 bases for us between Ellie De La Cruz, Kodama, and Jay Allen. We've got 3 guys with over 20 steals at this point. Allen's fine in center field, hitting .242 with his speed. Benny Montgomery, the Rule 5 pick, is a guy that we'd like to keep on the roster for the rest of the year at this point, if at all possible. He hasn't been incredibly productive, but we do like that glove, do like the speed. Think he could be a pretty valuable 4th or 5th outfielder for an extended period of time. So the question is, do we try to upgrade at a corner outfield position? Hendrick, after a pretty nice rookie year, .233, 24 doubles, 20 homers. Batting average has dropped to .213 this year. Still striking out a lot, and you can see his OPS plus and his WRC plus are below average at this point. He does still have option years left, so if we made a big move, we could send him down. I don't think there's anything we have to do, but if there's good value and there's a player who we can get for almost nothing in terms of the salary we need to put into it, we'll certainly take a look and think about it. Taking a look at the players who are available on the trade block, you can see a lot of infielders. Not a huge area of need for us. Don't think I would go there. Honestly, the only guy I would think about is Chisholm Jr. Listed as a center fielder, I would be thinking about him more as a corner outfielder, but he does have pretty good home run power, decent speed, hitting 258, only 7 home runs and 365 at-bats this year with the A's. But I would think he could be pretty productive, potentially playing in Great American Ballpark. In the final year of his contract, making $8.7 million. I think he could potentially be an upgrade for us in one of the corner outfield spots, although he'd be learning on the job a little bit in terms of his proficiency there. If we could get him for real cheap, I would think about it. Taking a look at the pitchers who are available, nobody who jumps off the page in terms of their ratings. I mean, I guess Jose Alvarado jumps off the page a bit in terms of his stuff and his movement. 31-year-old making $900,000, headed to free agency. Think he could certainly be additive, but as I talked about, I just don't feel like that we have to do something with our pitching staff. It's pretty good. Could obviously bring on Alcantara. Ground ball pitcher, throws triple digits with good movement on his pitches. Certainly could be pretty effective anywhere. 9-6 with a 4.05 ERA. Making a lot of money with a big team option next year. I tend to think the price on him might be prohibitive. And again, is he an upgrade? Certainly. He's a great pitcher. But our 4th and 5th starters right now are combined 20-2, both with ERAs under 3. We just don't have a lot that we need to do, and we still do have guys like Palante, Inoa, Chase Petty, and Clark Schmidt who could slide into those 4th and 5th starter roles if we really needed. So I don't feel like we need to do much as far as the pitching. I'm going to at least inquire about Chisholm Jr., though. And we've got a response back on our offer for Chisholm Jr., who I think could definitely help our offense, particularly with that left-handed bat against right-handed pitching. Give us a third big left-handed bat in the lineup. We offered Matt McClain, who, as we talked about, just hasn't worked out. Hitting a $195 last year, a $190 at the major league level this year. Like his versatility defensively, and his profile suggests that he shouldn't be a horrible hitter, but he's been pretty bad at the major league level. And we also included Wilyer Abreu, who's been trapped in AAA for us most of the last couple years. We did pick him up in the Rule 5 from Boston a few seasons ago, kept him up for a full year. He's been reasonably productive in AAA, but at 27 years old now just isn't a big-time prospect on our end. Issue is that they'd only do that deal if we included our starting second baseman, Nelvi Marte, undefeated Will Warren, or one of the top pitching prospects in our organization, Joshua Hod, the number 29 prospect in baseball, who we picked in the first round back in 2024. Actually, Hod at 21 years old might be looking ready for a promotion to A-ball after going 2-1 with a 2.72 ERA. Still not throwing all that hard, but may help his development to get out of rookie ball at this point. But certainly not going to give one of those players for a rental of a corner outfielder who probably would help us. But I'm not going to totally sacrifice the future to bring him on board. And we increased our offer to Oakland, including veteran outfielder in AAA for us, Willie Calhoun, as well as minor league center fielder Ariel Almonte, who's not a horrible prospect. And they're still looking for Marte or Will Warren. They also said they'd accept Justin Brule or Encarnacion Strand, but not willing to pull the trigger on that deal yet at this point, although there probably is an argument to be made that Encarnacion Strand, despite the fact he's been very productive this year, primarily playing against left-handed pitching, hitting .314 with 9 homers and 118 at-bats, could argue that if we could swap him in and take Matt McLain out of the deal, it might be palatable from our perspective. But I just don't feel like we really need to sacrifice a bunch for Jazz Chisholm Jr. I like him, and I think he could help us without a doubt. But we're 5th in the league in runs scored, 1st in runs allowed. It's July 29th. We're up 10 games still on Pittsburgh in the division. I just don't think we need to chase after a deal unnecessarily. And I think I have pieced together a monster deal for Jazz Chisholm Jr. I think we finally have an offer that we can make. I've been adding people to it. It's going to be one of the biggest deals I've ever made in terms of the number of people we're giving up. Matt McLain talked about, just hasn't worked out. Wilyer Abreu, Willie Calhoun, Ariel Almonte, we already talked about. Yerlin Confidant, 23-year-old outfielder, hasn't made it above AA for us. Certainly looks like he could have some decent home run power, but he's almost 24 years old. Gavin Grayovac, you may remember, he was our second-round pick back in 2023, our first draft. He was listed as a catcher, but very versatile defensively. Hasn't made it out of rookie ball, unfortunately, hitting just .213 in rookie ball this year. His batting averages have actually been trending in a negative direction down there. Just doesn't look like he's ever going to be a big-time player, unfortunately. And then we have to add in one more player, and most of them are the familiar names that we don't want to add. But they would take 24-year-old minor league pitcher Nestor Laurent. Really like his stuff. But he's only made it to high A ball for us, hasn't been incredibly productive there, and he's 24 years old. Think that his movement and control are going to be below average. And we've got a wealth of pitching. So I think we're going to make this trade. You can see that the A's have been playing Chisholm at second base more recently rather than center field. And honestly, that's actually part of the attraction. Feel like we could get this bat in the lineup. He could play a competent second base for us. Or he could end up in one of those corner outfield spots, but gives us another left-handed bat, gives us a bat with some power. I think it'll help us. We're giving up a ton of players, and they're all, I don't want to say they're all, but they're mostly guys who are useful major leaguers and or potentially useful players in the future. So we're giving up a lot for a 2-month rental, but we're not giving up anyone who is a top-end prospect. You know, taking a look at our system, we're ranked 3rd overall at this point. You can see between Minier, who's now in the majors, Jorge Guerrero, who's made his debut in rookie ball this year, David Leyva, who's still at our international complex, and then Joshua Hod, who we were just talking about. We've still got 4 of the top 30 prospects in baseball. So a pretty well-regarded farm system. I think we can afford to give up the guys that we're giving. So we're going to add in Nestor Laurent, and with them keeping 70% of his salary, we're going to just make it financially. Go ahead and complete the trade. Fans happy that we brought Jazz Chisholm Jr. on board. He is going to go right onto our major league roster, obviously. And we'll have to tweak the lineups a bit to see where we end up wanting him to play. But certainly bringing that left-handed bat on, in addition to Kelnick and Hendrick as our corner outfielders, and then Minier, who's come up more recently, gives us a bit more balanced lineup potentially, and hopefully we can do a little more damage against right-handed pitchers over the last couple months of the season. And we've tweaked what David Bell wanted to do with the lineups a bit, but you can see Chisholm's going to go right in as our leadoff hitter. He's going to be playing left field against right-handers, right field against left-handers. We'll hopefully not deal with too many issues while we get him a little more proficient defensively at those positions. But hopefully he can help jumpstart our offense a bit over the final 2 months of the season. And we're actually slightly negative now in terms of our total money available after that trade. So got a little boost in fan interest, and we're actually going to do a 180 on what we were doing at the start of this episode and actually increase our ticket prices a bit. We've been selling out recently. We're in first place. It's summertime. We are in a pennant race. We're trying to win it all this year. We brought on a new potential catcher to build around in Carson Kelly. And we've got the rental of Jazz Chisholm Jr. So we've made our moves, and we're getting ready to head into August. Nothing else that I expect the Reds will be doing between now and the last few hours when the calendar turns to August 1st. And as August begins, our Reds are still first place in the NL Central, 11.5 games up on the Pittsburgh Pirates, only team in the division with a winning record once again. Unfortunately, both the Dodgers with 66 wins and the Braves at 63 and 40 are ahead of us in the standings. So the big goal over these final 2 months of the season in August and September, and I guess into the beginning of October, is going to be to hopefully get past one of those teams. I don't have any doubt that we're going to end up winning the NL Central this year. So the main goal over the final 2 months of the season is to try to get past either Atlanta or less likely Los Angeles into one of the top 2 records in the National League to ensure that we don't have to play in a wild card series. Taking a look at the stats, Elly De La Cruz, second, or actually third in the league in home runs with 28, but only a home run behind Schwarber and Tatis Jr. Lead in the league in ribbies, third in steals. Jay Allen is leading the league in steals. Batter WAR, Elly De La Cruz is second in the league behind the Dodgers, Bobby Witt Jr. Will Warren and Nick Lodolo, 1-2 in the league in wins. Clay Holmes is second in saves. So it's been a nice year for the Reds so far. Hopefully we can keep playing good ball over the final 2 months of the season. Hopefully Chisholm Jr. will give us some help down the stretch. Hopefully Carson Kelly can also help us at catcher. He's got the batting average up to $182. And then clearly, when we get our starting shortstop, our starting second baseman, Nelvi Marte back, that will help. We're going to have to make a decision on what to do with Clark Schmidt in just a few days in the beginning of our next episode when we begin playing in August. But the season continues to go well. I'm reasonably happy with the draft, reasonably happy with what we did at the trade deadline. And now the goal is to keep these Reds healthy, keep them in first place in the National League Central, and hopefully get ahead of Atlanta and or the Dodgers in the standings by the time the season is over. And we'll find out how we do with all of those goals in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.